The moment I saw my stolen idea splashed across TechScope with another person's name attached, I could not breathe. But 3 years later, as I watch my million-dollar wellness empire flourish while his copycat company crumbles, I realize that sometimes the best revenge is not confrontation. It is absolutely crushing success. My name is Sabine Lark. I am 36 years old, and I built a million-dollar wellness tech brand out of a single notebook, a stolen dream, and the kind of rage that either destroys you or transforms you into something unstoppable. 3 years ago, I had the idea that changed my life and almost destroyed my faith in humanity. But let me start from the beginning, because this story is not just about stolen intellectual property or business betrayal. This is about what happens when someone tries to dim your light, and you decide to become a wildfire instead. Back then, I was drowning in the kind of exhaustion that seeps into your bones and makes every breath feel like swimming through concrete. Chronic fatigue syndrome had been my unwelcome companion for 2 years, turning my once vibrant life as a freelance UX designer into a constant battle between ambition and survival. I worked from a cramped studio apartment, my entire office consisting of a $500 laptop held together with electrical tape and prayers, surrounded by empty coffee cups and a vision board so stained with caffeine that my dreams looked sepia-toned. But exhaustion has a way of clarifying vision. When you are forced to slow down, you start noticing things others miss. And what I noticed was devastating. Everyone around me was burning out, and nobody had the tools to see it coming. My breakthrough came during one of those 3 a.m. moments when sleep refuses to visit, and your mind becomes hyper-aware of everything wrong with the world. I was lying in bed, my fitness tracker buzzing with congratulations for reaching 10,000 steps, while I felt like I had been hit by a freight train emotionally. The irony was suffocating. Here was this device celebrating my physical movement, while completely ignoring the fact that I was mentally and emotionally falling apart. That night, I grabbed my notebook and started sketching. What if we could track not just steps or sleep patterns, but the subtle signs of emotional burnout before they became devastating? What if technology could recognize the early warning signals that we ourselves often miss? I envisioned a wearable device that monitored skin conductivity changes during stress responses, analyzed voice tone fluctuations during phone calls, and even detected facial microexpressions through periodic selfie check-ins. It would not just collect data, it would understand the human behind the data. It would recognize when someone was pushing too hard, hiding their struggles, or approaching the cliff edge of complete burnout. I called it Ember, because burnout starts with a spark that we ignore until it becomes a consuming fire. For 6 months, I lived and breathed this concept. I researched every existing wellness device, studied biometric sensors, learned about machine learning algorithms, and interviewed dozens of people struggling with burnout. My tiny apartment transformed into a research laboratory, with whiteboards covering every wall, prototypes scattered across my kitchen table, and user journey maps taped to my bathroom mirror, so I could think through problems while brushing my teeth. I was obsessed, but it was the kind of beautiful obsession that comes from knowing you have discovered something that could genuinely help people. Every conversation with friends revealed another layer of the problem Ember could solve. Every article about workplace burnout rates felt like validation that this was not just a product idea, but a mission. The prototype was crude but functional. Using an Arduino board, some basic sensors, and more determination than technical expertise, I built a device that could actually detect stress patterns. It was ugly as hell, held together with 3D printed parts and hope, but it worked. When I wore it during particularly stressful client calls, it would buzz gently on my wrist, reminding me to breathe. When my voice became strained from overwork, it would suggest a 5-minute meditation break. But building the technology was only half the battle. I needed funding, connections, and business expertise that my freelance design background had not provided. So I started attending every startup event, co-working meetup, and entrepreneur gathering I could find, armed with my pitch deck and a desperation that probably showed more than I intended. That is where I met Tobias Chen. Tobias was everything I was not. Polished, connected, and radiating the kind of effortless confidence that comes from never having your dreams questioned. He was probably 45, always impeccably dressed in those expensive casual clothes that scream, "I have arrived." and he had the kind of handshake that felt like a business card exchanging itself. At every event, he was surrounded by eager entrepreneurs hanging on his words as he dropped names of successful exits and Silicon Valley connections. When I nervously approached him after a particularly brutal pitch competition where I had been eliminated in the first round, he listened to my Ember concept with the kind of intense focus that made me feel like I was finally being heard. His eyes lit up when I described the emotional burnout tracking capabilities. "This is exactly what the market needs," he said, leaning forward with genuine excitement. "A female founder with soul, building technology that actually cares about human experience rather than just optimizing productivity metrics." He asked intelligent questions about my research methodology, nodded appreciatively at my user interviews, and seemed genuinely impressed by my working prototype. For the first time in months, I felt like someone understood not just what I was building, but why it mattered. "I would love to help you take this to the next level," Tobias continued. "I have been advising early-stage wellness tech companies for 3 years, and I have connections with investors who specifically look for mission-driven founders like yourself." He offered to review my pitch deck, introduce me to potential investors, and provide strategic guidance on product development. He even suggested we schedule regular check-ins to maintain momentum, and asked if I could CC him on important emails so he could provide context when making introductions. Looking back now, I can see all the red flags I missed. The way he immediately positioned himself as essential to my success. How he subtly suggested that my technical background might not be sufficient for the business side of scaling. The questions that seemed supportive but were actually mining for specific details about my intellectual property. But at the time, I was drowning in imposter syndrome and gratitude. Here was this successful entrepreneur, voluntarily offering his time and connections to help me succeed. I felt like I had won some kind of mentor lottery. Over the next 2 months, Tobias became deeply embedded in my project. We met weekly at an upscale coffee shop where he would arrive with leather portfolios and fountain pens, making our collaborations feel official and important. He reviewed every iteration of my pitch deck, suggesting refinements that genuinely improved my presentation. He introduced me to 2 potential investors who took meetings. Even though neither ultimately funded my project, I shared everything with him. My technical specifications, my user research findings, my go-to-market strategy, even my personal struggles with chronic fatigue, and how they had inspired the product concept. He listened with the kind of empathy that made me feel understood and supported. He encouraged me to file provisional patents, helped me refine my target customer personas, and even offered to fund a small focus group to test user interface concepts. Every interaction felt like validation that I was building something meaningful with the support of someone who truly believed in my vision. The warning signs were there, but they were subtle enough that my gratitude overshadowed my instincts. The way he started using we when discussing my project. How he began suggesting strategic pivots that aligned more with his network's interests than my original mission. The increasing frequency of his requests to see updated technical documentation. But I trusted him. More than that, I needed him. As a first-time founder with no business network and a chronic illness that made traditional networking exhausting, Tobias felt like my lifeline to the entrepreneurial world I desperately wanted to join. Then came the morning that shattered everything. I was having one of those rare good days where my energy levels felt almost normal. Sitting at my kitchen table with coffee that actually tasted good instead of medicinal, scrolling through TechScope while my prototype charged on the counter. The headline hit me like a physical blow. Introducing Thermic. The future of burnout tech is here. By Tobias Chun, CEO and visionary of Humanware Labs. My hands started shaking before my brain could fully process what I was seeing. The logo was a stylized flame, eerily similar to the Ember icon I had been developing. The product description could have been copy-pasted from my pitch deck. Advanced biometric monitoring. Emotional burnout prediction. Voice tone analysis. Facial expression recognition. Every feature I had researched, every innovation I had prototyped, every user need I had identified was presented as Tobias's revolutionary breakthrough. My 6 months of obsessive development had been repackaged as his visionary insight. My name appeared nowhere in the article. Not as a collaborator, not as an inspiration, not even as a footnote. the technology one had bled over, the mission that had consumed my life, the solution to problems I had lived through personally. All of it was now attributed to someone else's genius. I could not breathe. The coffee cup slipped from my numb fingers, shattering on the kitchen floor in a pattern that somehow looked like my broken dreams. I sat there among the ceramic shards and spreading coffee stain, reading the article over and over, hoping each refresh would reveal that this was some kind of mistake. But there was no mistake. Tobias had taken my idea, my research, my passion project, and launched it as his own company. He had used our meetings, our shared documents, our collaborative relationship to extract every detail he needed to replicate my vision. And he had done it with the kind of professional polish that comes from years of experience and significant funding, resources I had never possessed. The next 3 days were a blur of rage, shame, and self-doubt that nearly broke me completely. I alternated between fury and humiliation, pacing my apartment like a caged animal, while my mind spiraled through increasingly dark scenarios. I drafted angry emails that I never sent. I researched lawyers I could not afford. I considered confronting him publicly on social media, then remembered that he had the kind of professional network that could destroy my reputation with a few strategic phone calls. The shame was the worst part. How could I have been so naive? How had I missed the signs that seemed so obvious in retrospect? I felt like I had painted a target on my back and handed him the arrows. But on the 4th day, something shifted. I was lying on my bathroom floor, having exhausted myself with crying and rage, when I remembered something my grandmother had told me years ago during another devastating disappointment. She had been a seamstress who built a small alterations business from her kitchen table, and when a larger shop stole her most popular dress pattern, she did not waste time on lawyers or confrontation. "Do not waste your fire screaming in the dark, Sabine," she had said, her weathered hands still steady as she stitched. "Light your own damn torch, and show them how bright you can burn." Lying there on the cold tile, I realized that Tobias had made a crucial mistake. He had stolen my idea, but he could not steal my understanding of why it mattered. He could replicate my features, but he could not replicate my heart. He could copy my technology, but he could not copy my authentic connection to the problem I was solving. I picked myself up, cleaned the coffee stains from my kitchen floor, and got back to work. But this time, I was not building just a product. I was building a revolution. I scrapped everything that looked too similar to what Tobias had launched, and focused on what made my approach fundamentally different. While he was positioning Thermic as a productivity optimization tool for high performers, I would build something that prioritized healing over efficiency, community over competition, authentic well-being over performance metrics. I rebranded completely. Ember became kindled, not just because of the obvious fire metaphor, but because of what it meant to kindle something. To nurture a small flame into sustainable warmth. To tend carefully to something precious until it could sustain itself. Instead of focusing purely on burnout detection, I expanded the concept into burnout recovery and prevention. I partnered with licensed therapists and wellness coaches to develop evidence-based interventions that the device could recommend. When Kindle detected stress patterns, it would not just alert the user. It would offer specific, personalized strategies for addressing the underlying causes. The app became a comprehensive wellness ecosystem. Guided meditations designed specifically for burnout recovery. Cognitive behavioral therapy exercises adapted for chronic stress. Community support features that connected users experiencing similar challenges. Even an innovative audio messaging system that sent encouraging voice notes from other community members during particularly difficult periods. I reached out to every person I had interviewed during my original research and asked them to become beta testers for this expanded vision. Their feedback was incredible. This was not just another fitness tracker or productivity tool. This was technology that truly understood their struggles and offered genuine support. The hardware design evolved too. Instead of the sleek, minimalist aesthetic that dominated the wearables market, Kindle had a more organic, comforting appearance. The materials were chosen for their therapeutic properties. Cooling copper elements for anxiety relief, textured surfaces that provided sensory grounding during panic attacks, gentle vibration patterns inspired by breathing exercises. Every design decision was informed by actual lived experience with burnout, not market research reports or focus group data. This was technology built by someone who understood the problem from the inside out, for people who needed solutions that actually worked in the messy reality of human struggle. But building a better product was only part of my strategy. I also needed to tell a better story. Instead of positioning myself as a tech entrepreneur with a revolutionary product, I presented Kindled as a movement for anyone who had ever been told their exhaustion was their fault, their boundaries were weakness, or their need for rest was laziness. This was bigger than wearable technology. This was about reclaiming our right to be human in a world that treats us like productivity machines. My crowdfunding campaign launched with a 3-minute video filmed in my kitchen, using natural lighting and my smartphone camera. No fancy production, no Silicon Valley buzzwords, no promises of disrupting entire industries. Just me, sitting at my scratched kitchen table, talking honestly about burnout, betrayal, and the technology one had built to help us all survive and thrive. I talked about my chronic fatigue diagnosis, and how it had forced me to question everything I thought I knew about success and productivity. I shared the story of having my ideas stolen, not for sympathy, but to illustrate why authentic, mission-driven innovation matters more than flashy marketing and venture capital funding. I am not building Kindled to optimize your performance, I said directly into the camera. I am building it to honor your humanity, to remind you that your worth is not measured by your productivity, to give you permission to rest, to heal, to be imperfect and still deserving of support. The response was overwhelming. Within 6 hours, we had raised $50,000. By the end of the first day, we had hit $100,000. By the end of the week, we had exceeded our initial goal of $250,000, and were climbing toward $500,000. But more important than the money were the messages. Thousands of people shared their own stories of burnout, betrayal, and recovery. They talked about feeling seen and understood in a way that traditional wellness products had never provided. They expressed gratitude for technology that prioritized their well-being over their efficiency. The campaign went viral in ways I had never imagined. Wellness influencers shared it with their audiences. Mental health advocates praised its approach to technology as healing rather than optimization. Even several high-profile entrepreneurs publicly supported the project, sharing their own experiences with burnout and the need for more humane approaches to success. Major media outlets picked up the story, not just the typical tech blogs, but mainstream publications interested in the broader cultural conversation about work-life balance, mental health, and authentic entrepreneurship. I was interviewed by podcasts, featured in magazine articles, and invited to speak at conferences about building mission-driven businesses. Meanwhile, Tobias's Thermic was struggling. Without the authentic understanding of burnout that had driven my original research, his product felt hollow and performative. Early reviews criticized its focus on productivity optimization over genuine wellness support. Users complained that it felt like another tool for self-surveillance rather than self-care. More damaging were the questions about originality that began surfacing in tech journalism. Several reporters had noticed the similarities between Thermic and my earlier pitch presentations, which I had shared publicly during various startup competitions. While I never directly accused Tobias of theft, I did not need to. The timeline and feature overlap spoke for themselves. His funding dried up within 8 months. Early employees left for companies with clearer missions and more authentic leadership. The product was quietly discontinued after less than a year on the market, with existing customers receiving full refunds and recommendations to explore other wellness technology options. Kindled, meanwhile, was thriving beyond my wildest projections. Our initial production run sold out within hours of shipping. The waitlist grew to 6 months, then 8 months, then a full year as demand continued exceeding our manufacturing capacity. We opened international markets, and immediately saw similar enthusiasm from customers who had been underserved by traditional wellness technology. The app ecosystem continued expanding based on user feedback and partnerships with mental health professionals. We added features for specific populations: healthcare workers, caregivers, students, entrepreneurs, each with customized interventions and community support networks. Most importantly, we maintained our mission-driven approach as we scaled. Every new hire was evaluated not just for technical skills, but for genuine understanding of and commitment to our vision of technology as healing. We implemented policies that protected our own team from the burnout we were helping others prevent. We donated a percentage of profits to mental health organizations and offered free devices to individuals who could not afford them. The recognition followed naturally. Wired named our app the best wellness innovation of the year. Fast Company featured us in their most innovative companies list. The World Health Organization invited us to contribute to their global mental health initiatives. But the validation that meant the most came from our users. Messages from people who said Kindled had helped them recognize burnout before it became devastating. Stories from individuals who had found community and support through our platform during their darkest moments. Testimonials from healthcare workers, teachers, and caregivers who finally had technology that understood their unique stresses and offered genuine assistance. Today, 3 years after that devastating morning when I discovered my stolen idea, Kindled ships globally to a waitlist that extends 6 months out. We have helped over 100,000 people develop healthier relationships with stress, work, and rest. Our company has grown to 37 employees, all of whom receive comprehensive mental health benefits and unlimited personal days. Sometimes people ask if I ever confronted Tobias directly about what he did. The answer is no, and here is why. The best revenge is not confrontation or legal action or public shaming. The best revenge is building something so successful, so meaningful, and so authentically better that the original theft becomes irrelevant. But I would be lying if I said I had completely let go of my anger. There is a part of me that still feels satisfied knowing that Tobias follows my company from what is obviously a burner social media account. I can see him viewing our LinkedIn posts, watching our product launch videos, keeping track of our media coverage and investor announcements. And I know he sees the ads. Because when I was setting up our digital marketing campaigns, I made sure that anyone who had ever visited thermic.tech would be retargeted with Kindled advertisements across every platform they used. Every time he opens his phone, checks his email, or browses the internet, there is a chance he will see an ad for the company that grew from the idea he tried to steal. The ads are not vindictive or petty. They are beautiful, inspiring, and focused on the genuine impact we are making in people's lives. But I imagine they serve as a constant reminder of what authentic innovation looks like when it is driven by genuine mission rather than opportunistic copying. Every time he sees our latest user testimonial, our newest feature announcement, or our expanding global reach, I hope he remembers the trust he betrayed and the opportunity he wasted. Not because I want him to suffer, but because I want him to understand the difference between building something meaningful and simply replicating someone else's vision. The greatest lesson I learned through this experience is that ideas, even revolutionary ones, are not as valuable as the authentic understanding and genuine commitment behind them. Tobias could steal my concept, but he could not steal my lived experience with chronic fatigue. He could copy my features, but he could not copy my deep empathy for people struggling with burnout. He could replicate my pitch deck, but he could not replicate the passion that came from personally needing the solution I was building. Authenticity cannot be faked or copied. Mission cannot be stolen. And when you build something from a place of genuine understanding and commitment to serving others, that foundation becomes unshakable even when everything else falls apart. To everyone watching this story and struggling with their own challenges, betrayals, or stolen dreams, your fire is yours alone. Others might try to capture the heat, but they cannot capture the source. Focus on tending your own flame, feeding it with authentic purpose, and sharing its warmth with people who truly need what you have to offer. The world does not need another copied idea. It needs your unique understanding, your authentic voice, and your genuine commitment to making things better. Light your own damn torch, and then watch how brightly you can burn. If this story inspired you or made you think differently about entrepreneurship, innovation, or overcoming betrayal, please subscribe to our channel for more real stories of resilience and success. Your support helps us share these important messages with people who need to hear them most.